So enterprise versus optional units. Enterprise units give the producer a significant discount for combining all of his optional units together into one big pot. Um, this works really good if you have just a couple sections of land that are kind of one unit, or maybe they are even in one unit anyways. As long as we have 20 more acres and two or more sections, we get to qualify for this big discount. Basically, you have to have a farm-wide loss by crop before any payment will be awarded. So most of you guys are familiar with optional units on the crop insurance side, and that's the thing that we've always encouraged people to do because it'll pay you basically by section on your farm. So if you had one section or one unit get hailed out, the crop insurance would kick in, and that would award you a payment because that chunk of your farm had been wiped out. If you have enterprise units, you're going to get a huge discount on the premium side, but it's going to be a possibility that you could get several sections wiped out by hail, let's say, and not get a payment because the rest of the farm did so well. You still keep your optional units production separate at harvest so that we have the opportunity to switch back and forth from year to year if we want. If you don't keep those units separate at harvest time, then we end up with no option other than just to keep it an enterprise because we have no way to prove that you kept the optional units separate. And this can result into up to an 80% reduction in premium if over 800 acres of total crop. So the more acres you seed into these enterprise units, the bigger the discount. It's a good option if you have a lot of low yields and high premium. How do I qualify for enterprise units? This is the most important thing to understand, is that you have to have 20 or more acres in two or more different sections. So you can't seed 10 acres in one section and 600 in the other and get this discount. There has to be 20 or more acres in those two sections. So you could have 20 and 600, you couldn't have 10 and 600. If you don't satisfy these requirements, you'll end up going back to the optional unit premium, and so your premium is going to be at least double what you were banking on in this scenario. Are your fields in close proximity to each other and have similar APHs? This is another thing that would help eliminate some of the risk from switching to optional to enterprise. And the more acres you seed of the crop, the bigger the discount. So if you put all your units of one crop / type together, you may end up getting half the farm wiped out by hail and still not get a loss payment. That's the first big risk of enterprise units. Obviously, what would mitigate a lot of that risk would be to use hail insurance to supplement this, right? So if you have a good crop and you have a fair number of acres in enterprise units, you're going to end up having to probably spend as much in hail insurance as what you saved on the crop insurance side. As long as you do that, that takes care of a lot of the risk. So instead of $100 in hail, you might have to buy $200 per acre if it's a good year. If it's not a good year, you probably won't buy the hail at all, and you'll have saved on the federal crop side. So here's an example of what well-grouped units would be. You can see here we have all our units kind of in one area. So let's say they're all within a couple miles of each other. If a hailstorm comes through, it wipes out a good chunk of these units. It's probably going to affect them all. Same thing with the drought would probably affect this area all at once. So if you keep all this crop just in one spot for these enterprise units, at least whatever happens to that area is probably more closely reflected on your crop insurance. Here's what happens, obviously, if these units are spread way out. So some of you guys might have land that's 30 miles apart. It's possible that we have all three of these thrown together in an enterprise unit if you select that option. If a hailstorm comes through and wipes out the middle of your farm, the other two units might still have exceptional crops on them, and there'd be enough bushels between all of these that you wouldn't get a payment. So here's an example of how enterprise versus optional units would pay. So in this example, we have 3 units set up on the screen. As you can see, we have a 30 bushel guarantee on 300 acres on the top one, so a 9,000 bushel guarantee. We cut 6,000 bushels, so we had a 3,000 bushel loss payment with optional units. The next one had a 25 bushel guarantee on 200 acres, so 5,000 bushels. We cut 7,000 here, and so we didn't get a loss payment with the optional units. Same thing on the last one. We had a 4,200 bushel guarantee on unit 3. We cut 5,000 bushels, so we didn't get a loss payment on optional units on there as well. If we have enterprise units, it's going to take all 3 of these units and throw them together into one big pot for the guarantee first. So in this scenario, we had an 18,200 bushel guarantee. We cut 6,000 plus 7,000 plus 5,000 bushels. So like we said, we're rolling all these together into one. So we had 18,000 bushels that we harvested total of wheat, let's say, in the farm. So you end up with a 200 bushel loss with enterprise units, where had we kept this in optional, you would have got a 3,000 bushel loss because of the fact that it reflected what happened to unit one completely and didn't add it into the pot. So as you can see, this can make a pretty substantial difference in your loss payment. What would have helped in this scenario, if this was hail especially, is a decent level of hail insurance on the enterprise unit side, because that would have made up for the difference on what we lost in the crop insurance, right? So as you can see on this slide, this just shows you the premium advantage for going one way versus the other. You can see at like 75% level here, we would have paid $15 in optional units and only $571 in enterprise. So we're talking huge difference, a third of the premium in this scenario basically for going enterprise. The important part to remember, like we said, is that you're probably going to have to put that savings into hail insurance if you have a good crop, if you want to go this direction. A level advantage on enterprise units, obviously, like we said, if we go back to this previous slide, it would allow you to buy way farther up in levels. And so that advantage would be that if you get droughted out, your whole farm is going to have a higher guarantee, right? So if you look at this scenario, if we were to be in optional units down here at 65%, it would cost us $9 an acre. We can go all the way up to 80% on enterprise units and still be at $9 an acre. So in a drought scenario where you're short bushels over the whole farm, enterprise units at a higher level, that would be a better payment scenario. Most other things though, whether it's disease, winter kill, insect problems, the optional units would be a better situation. So if, like we said, if you're in a drought scenario, you could buy up to levels which should actually have a much higher loss payment than lower levels in optional units.